Hey there, Brittany here from Just Be Crafty. If you're new here, welcome, and if not, thank you so much for coming back. I have a fun new tutorial for you today. We're going to learn how to make these super fun and adorable pumpkins. It's a great stash buster project, so I encourage you to use yarn you already have on hand for these, and make up a bunch in all sorts of colors and different types of yarn, and before you know it, you'll have a whole set of pumpkins with beautiful texture and lots of interest. For this tutorial, you'll need one ball of number 4 medium weight yarn. I'm using Red Heart Super Saver in the color Carrot, a 5.5mm hook, scissors, a yarn needle, fiber fill to stuff the pumpkin, twine, cinnamon sticks, and a glue gun, which is optional, and I'll have all the materials I'm using in today's video linked below. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. To begin, you're going to grab your yarn and make sure you give yourself a nice long tail. I suggest about an arms and a half lengths long. We're going to use that tail at the end to help cinch our pumpkin together. So once you have your nice long tail, make a slip knot and slide your slip knot onto your hook. Making sure that you grab your tail and put it out of the way. We're going to make a 23 chain foundation chain. So we're going to start by making 23 chains. While you're working on your foundation chain, I just wanted to mention that as always, I'll have links to the written pattern down below in the video's description box. You can view the pattern for free on my blog, and I'll also have a link to a printable PDF version which can be purchased in my Etsy shop. You'll also find written instruction for a couple other pumpkin sizes with some alternate yarns, but I encourage you to really play around and make your own unique pumpkins. You'll want to follow along with the written instruction as you watch this tutorial to help guide you through the project. Okay, so now we should have 23 chains, and we're going to rotate our foundation chain over, and we're going to be working into these little back bars. So we're going to begin with a half double crochet. We're going to yarn over, and then we're going to make our first half double crochet into the third chain from our hook. Insert your hook into that back bar, draw up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all loops on your hook. Yarn over, insert your hook into the next chain, draw up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all loops on your hook. And we're just going to repeat this process across the row. So yarn over, insert your hook into the next chain, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on your hook. Keep repeating this process across the row. You should end the row with 21 stitches. All right, I'm finishing up my last couple stitches of row 1. I'm now doing my last stitch. And there is row 1. We're going to start row 2 by turning our work. And we're going to start with a chain 2. All right, so now we're ready to begin row 2. And we're going to repeat row 2 for the remainder of the project. So all we're going to do is we're going to make a half double crochet, and we're going to work into the back loop of the stitch only. So you're going to want to yarn over, and we're going to insert our hook into that first stitch, but catching the back loop only, draw up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all loops on our hook. So we yarn over, insert our hook into the back loop of the next stitch, draw up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all loops on our hook. So we're simply working the same half double crochet that we were in row 1, but we're just doing it in the back loop only of each stitch for every row now and after. And what this is going to do is this is going to create a really nice ribbed fabric. So that way when we go to make our pumpkins will look like they have the ridges that real pumpkins have, and they'll look more realistic. Just keep working on your half double crochets and meet back up with me once you get to the end of the row. I'm finishing up my last couple stitches of row 2. Okay, now I'm done. And we're ready to begin row 3. So we're going to turn our work. Once again, we're going to start with a chain 2. And we're going to work half double crochets into each stitch across the row, working in the back loop only. So we've yarned over, we're going into the back loop of the first stitch, and we're making our half double crochet. We're just going to keep repeating this for the rest of the project. So we're simply going to be working back and forth in rows. We're going to start with a chain 2, and we're going to work half double crochets into the back loops only of each stitch. Keep working back and forth in rows until your piece is about 10 or 11 inches long. The formula for these pumpkins is super simple. You just want the length of your fabric to be about double its width. So the width of my fabric that I have right here is about 5.5 inches wide. So if I take that number and double it, that gives me 11 inches. So I just want to make the length to be about 11 inches. So you can take that information and you can go both ways. You can make it smaller. Like let's say you wanted to make a little pumpkin. You could make a foundation chain that was about 3 inches long, and then you would just need to crochet up until you had about 6 inches. Or if you went in the other direction and wanted to make a larger pumpkin, you could make a foundation chain that was about 7 inches, and then you would then double that and you would make the length about 14 inches. So it's however you want to make it. You can totally make this your own. This is where I suggest you play around with different yarn thicknesses. And now I know I had already mentioned that below I have a couple written patterns to give you some guidance on using a bulky weight and also a super bulky weight yarn. Yeah, so feel free to play around here and get creative. All right, so I think I am done. I have about 11 inches. I'm going to just go ahead and measure it to be sure. So I'm going to take out my ruler, and you can see my width is about 5.5 inches. And I'm just going to check my length and see if I have 11. And yeah, it looks like I'm at about 11 inches. Okay, so perfect. I'm ready to move on to my next step. Fold your piece in half. Fold your piece in half so the starting and ending edge are both touching, and we're going to slip stitch our pumpkin closed. So we're going to start by, I'm going to zoom in here. We're going to start with a chain 1, and I'm going to slip stitch by grabbing the outer loops of my stitches only. So I grab that outer loop, and then I'm finding that corresponding other stitch, and I'm grabbing the outer loop of that stitch as well. I'm going to draw up a loop between both and slip stitch. So we're just going to repeat that across the row. So I'm catching not both loops, but just the outer loop of both stitches that I'm lining up, drawing up a loop, and then just slipping the stitch. So once again, grabbing the outer loop of this side, grabbing the outer loop of the corresponding stitch on the other side, and we're just, oops, I dropped it, and we're just slip stitching. So just line up your stitches and repeat this process across the row. All right, I'm just working on my last stitch here. We're slipping it, and all right, we slip stitched across the row. And now that if you look, honestly, you can't even really tell where that seam was. So just end with a chain 1. You can cut your yarn at this point and just fasten off to secure it. And really, that seam is invisible. Okay, so now take your yarn needle and thread one of your tails. And now we're ready to stitch along the top to cinch it closed. So you're just going to take your yarn needle and go from the back forward, and you're going to go into the side of, every row, every other row about. There's really no fancy way of doing this. We're just kind of whip stitching around the top, going from the back of the work with our needle and pulling it through to the front. And you're just going to do this all the way around until we get back around to the beginning again. And this is just going to create a cinch, so that way we can just pull the yarn and cinch the bottom of our pumpkin closed. Okay, so now I went all the way back around to the beginning, and I'm just gonna pull my yarn and pull it gently. You don't want to rip it. You're probably not going to rip it, but just be kind of careful and be mindful of that. So you'll see that even after you stitch it, after you cinch it closed, you might still have a little hole there. So you're gonna want to go ahead and stitch that closed. Just use your yarn needle to close up that hole. So just make a stitch or two along the top to try to just close that gap a little bit more. And it doesn't have to be completely closed, but just do the best you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. And once you get it closed to your liking, just go ahead and pull that tail back through to the inside of your pumpkin. And we're just going to create a little knot in an area nearby. So just insert your hook, grabbing a few strands of yarn, pulling it up through, making a loop, and then pulling your tail through that loop. And you can do this once or twice if you like. Once you feel like your tail is sufficiently tied, you can go ahead and cut your tail. I like doing this twice usually, so it feels nice and secure. So see, the bottom is nice and closed, and we're ready to move on. So we can go ahead and clip that tail. And now we're ready for the fun part. We get to stuff our pumpkin. So grab your fiber fill, and even though this is a quite small pumpkin, you're going to need a little bit more than what you think you do. I would say maybe like 3 or 4 good handful sizes of fiber fill and stuff it in. You don't want it to be too stuffed, but you also don't want it to be understuffed. Once you're happy with the way that it's filled, I think I want a little bit more. Okay, I think that's good. So once you're happy with the amount of filling you have, it's time to cinch the top closed. Okay, so now we're ready to work with our other tail. So we're just going to do the same exact thing we did for the bottom. We're just going to take our tail and whip stitch around the top so that way we can cinch it closed. And if at this point you feel like you have too much fiber fill or you have too little fiber fill, make your final adjustments. Okay, so I made it all the way back around, and now I'm just pulling my tail to cinch the top closed. And I'm kind of just using my hands to guide and make sure the fiber fill is staying inside my pumpkin. I'm just pulling that closed. And so really pretty much no matter how hard you pull it, you're going to have that hole at the top, but that's okay. We want to keep that hole there. And you don't want it to be too big, but you want to make it kind of as small as you can. But you do want to leave it there because that is where we are actually going to stuff our cinnamon stick in for our pumpkin stem. So that hole is totally fine. So once you get it to your liking, you're going to want to knot your tail and secure that hole to stay right where it's at. So tie a knot or two and see there's just that little hole, and that's what we'll use for our cinnamon stick. Okay, so once you get it to your liking, you could totally stop here, but what I really like, and I think what adds to the realistic factor, is to kind of smush it down. So we're going to use this leftover tail and take your yarn needle and just poke it all the way through and poke it through all the way to the bottom. And you're going to pull it tight. And then you're gonna just stick it back up through, but make sure it's going up into a different spot than where you just came out of. And you're gonna pull that tight. And it's gonna kind of smush your pumpkin. It's gonna kind of give it that little smushed pumpkin look. And you're gonna wanna do this just a couple times. So stick your tail back through, all the way back down through the bottom. And once you get the shape that you like, and this doesn't have to be perfect, like mine is kind of a little lopsided, and that's fine because in nature, pumpkins are lopsided. That's just how they are. So once you get the shape that you like, you could do this as many times or as little as you like. You're just gonna take your yarn needle and stick it through a couple of your yarn fibers, and you're going to knot it to secure. Make sure you're pulling it tight to keep that shape. And I like to knot it again for good measure. And now when you're done, just stick your needle back through into your pumpkin and pull it up kind of tight. And then you can just cut your tail. And we're not even going to worry about weaving it in. We're just going to stick it back into the pumpkin. And guess what? No one will ever know. Okay, so there's our pumpkin. Look how cute it is. So now we're ready for the finishing details. And we need a cinnamon stick. You can either use one or you could put a couple together. This is a small enough pumpkin where I think just one would be good. And that looks a little bit tall for me, so I'm going to cut my cinnamon stick down. So cut your cinnamon stick down to size. Might be a little hard to cut. Be careful. Be very, very careful, of course. And okay, I think that'll be good. So I'm just going to stick that in there. And that looks way better. That looks way, way better. Okay, so look how cute that is. You could totally stop there. But I think what adds a really cute touch is to add some twine. So I'm just going to cut a small piece of twine. I got this from the dollar store. And we're going to just tie. We're just going to tie a little bow around our cinnamon stick. Make it cute. Okay, oh my gosh, I love this. Look how cute this is. So now we just have to cut those little tails down to size. Yeah, because they don't need to be that long. Oh, how cute. I love it. I love it. And at this point, you can use a glue gun if you want to secure your cinnamon stick down to your pumpkin and also the bow. You can use that for reinforcement if you need that for safety reasons or durability reasons. But for my purposes, they're just going to be on a shelf. No one's going to be bothering them, so I'm not even going to worry about gluing them. But that's totally up to you. And I really hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you did, let me know by giving the video a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!